Welcome everyone to our session. My name is Wesley Holden. I'm the community manager here at Totara Learning, and today we're going to talk through what is Totara Learn. We're going to be looking at features in the software, talking about support and service options as well, and we're going to look at things like customization and branding. Thank you all for joining us. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We're using Zoom for the session, which you guys are in and using, so you should be good to go. We will be posting this publicly after the session up on YouTube as well as on our Totara.community site. We will also continue discussions and continue our Q&A over on the Totara.community site as well. So if you don't have an account, please come set yourself up for one for free. It gives you access to the community site, gives you access to resources about Totara, as well as things like materials to learn more about the software, access to the help site, access to other Totara users and partners to ask questions and use discussion forums. So please feel free to join us there. So just a couple of benefits. So Totara Learning as a company has been around since 2010. We originally started with sort of three parent companies coming together, and they were all companies that were already involved with open source learning solutions. And Totara was sort of came up with because we needed something a little bit more focused on corporate training. There's a lot of really great academic LMS solutions out there, but we were looking to cover more of the talent management market. You know, if you are an HR director, not only do you need to worry about what, compliance training people are receiving, but you need to keep track of it. You need to be able to go back and see, when somebody needs to recertify, you need to get them notifications, you need to be able to get users into the system. It's not just about the learning materials, it's about all of that other stuff too, all of those management pieces. And many learning management systems didn't really include those pieces, as well as having a solid academic core of functionality. So we came out with Totara, originally Totara LMS, now Totara Learn. And they're sort of, we run under the 4 freedoms model when it comes to open source. First, you have the freedom to innovate, meaning that when you get the source code, first, you get the source code because it's open source. When you get the software, you do get access to the source code, and you are able to configure it, customize it, develop additional functionality into it if you want to, develop plugins, connect it with other software like HR solutions, webinar solutions, e-commerce solutions, etc. So you have the ability to take what we give you out of the box, which is a great learning management system that gets you up and running, and connect it with all of the other tools that you know and love and that you may have already been using for a long time. So that innovation can be something that you choose to do as a company, or it can be something that you have a Totara partner company do for you. So Totara partner companies are those companies that essentially supply Totara. So we are like an R&D shop. We develop the software itself, and then we support our partner companies who are able to come to you and say, okay, here's the solution you're looking to implement, ask you questions, get your workflow, and find out exactly what you're looking for. They then are able to help you use that freedom of choice to choose the solution that works best for you. What features and functionality will be best, if Totara Learn is the right solution for your needs, those sorts of pieces. And you get to choose what pieces you want to turn on or off, how you want to roll things out, what version of the software you want to sit on, things like that. That's all going to be stuff that is available to you that's often not available in proprietary software. Oftentimes you run into things like data being locked up, where if you're using one solution, you may have to pay to get your your data back out of the system, or it may come out in a proprietary format that you can't just transfer to some other learning management system, or you can't get your compliance records out. Whereas with Totara, we focus on the freedom to learn. Like, we want to make your job easier. We want you to be able to get in, get everything recorded that you need to record, move data in from other systems, get your data out if you need to. If you in the future, 5 years from now, find some other solution that suits your needs better, that's totally fine. You'll be able to take your data with you and import it into that new solution if that other solution has that ability. And the final big piece is the freedom to save. So one focus we have is that because it's open source software, you're not paying a licensing fee every year to have access to the software. And so you're able to take the money that would go into something like that and put it towards services, or put it towards the people that you need to actually run the system. So those are our goals when it comes to, being an open source learning management company. So let's jump in now to the solution a little bit. And what I've got for you is a series of actually screenshots from the system. And we're just going to talk through the features and functionality rather than I can do a little bit of a live walkthrough if we have questions at the end that aren't covered. But I found that we've got to the point where we have enough functionality that if I try to walk through the system, I come away with people sort of glassy-eyed and feeling overwhelmed by the amount of information. So what I've done is taken the presentation and sort of put into chunks. So first, we're going to talk about learning and delivery. What does a student see? What does a trainer need to do? That kind of thing. So how do we actually get them their solution? And feel free to ask questions as we go. If it's something that I can cover right in the moment, I'm happy to. Otherwise, we will catch questions at the end. So the first big piece would be talking about social and collaborative learning. So every learning management system has some similar tools, things like discussion forums. So you can go and create threaded discussions, have attachments, subscribe to discussions and posts. So that your learners can use that constructivist philosophy and learn from each other. We can go and ask some questions, and people can they can read each other's posts, they can come back and provide additional information as needed and help each other out. We also have a chat tool, and I'm going to show you these on a course page so you get to see sort of what it all looks like together, but we're just going to talk about tools first. There is a synchronous chat tool, and so if you want people to come in, be able to have a scheduled chat or have office hours or something like that where people can come in and ask questions, you can do that. You can also go back and have access to the log. So if people have come in and asked questions, you can come back as a trainer and say, okay, well, here are the questions people asked. Here are the ones that their classmates were able to answer, and here are the things that I need to provide in terms of resources to fulfill those other questions. There is also a messaging tool built directly into the software. So if you want to be able to message other people that are taking the same course as you, or maybe somebody had a really good post in a discussion forum, but you have a question for them that might be something that is covered more by like HIPAA or FERPA or some privacy standard, where you need to have another discussion with them, but you don't necessarily want it to be broadcast to everyone. We can also build things like wikis and have workshop modules so that learners can come in and they can build things together, like best practice wiki or policy documents or things like that. They can come in and build these collaborative knowledge-based repositories. And what we do is we basically supply the tool, you give it to your learners, and then they're able to come in and build content. And often what we do in-house is we'll start that content and then allow our learners to continue on with it. So we sort of give them some seeds to start with. We also have a workshop tool. So this workshop tool allows users to work together. You come in as an instructor and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here are our goals. And then there are phases to it. The learners can come in, they can submit their work. We can allow them to peer assess each other's work. And I can also have assessment, from my perspective as a trainer, or I could have multiple trainers who are doing assessment. We can do grading and evaluation. And so you're still getting a lot of these great academic tools to fulfill the learning needs. Now, keep in mind that you aren't necessarily going to use all of these tools in every single one of your courses. If you're doing a compliance training course, you just want to issue a SCORM module, and you don't necessarily need people to workshop and work together or anything like that. That's totally fine too. The system is designed such that you can deliver content, you can allow people to have a constructive workspace together if you want to, and those can be mixed together on the same site. You get to choose. So in this case, this is an example of external resources that are coming into the site. So I can do things like creating SCORMs with like Articulate or Adapt or whatever your favorite SCORM creation tool is. People are also doing content creation with other tools as well. Those are just the ones off the top of my head. But you can create those sorts of things and just drop them into the system. So the system is like a repository for those that delivers the content to the learners. So, in the case of academia, they'd be using, textbook manufacturers often supply SCORMs and things like that. In your case, you might be working with like Go1 or Allen Interactions or some other company like that that does content creation. You can take that content and then put it directly into your Totara Learn system. You can also build content within the software. So if you want to, you can actually there's an HTML editor, you can build your own pages to supply information as well. So instead of like uploading that Word doc, you can take the content from your Word doc, put it into a wiki or put it into a page so that learners can come and click and view it right through their browser. So it helps with consistency side of things so that you're able to deliver your content without your learner needing proprietary software to be installed. If you want to, there's also a lesson module that allows you to upload PowerPoints. So, your learners don't have to worry about having PowerPoint on their own system, that sort of thing. So using a learning management system like this is going to allow you to deliver lots of different types of content, the same stuff that you're delivering through other systems or through web pages or things like that. But then we're able to track those interactions as well. This is an example of just a little bit of a course page. So the learner comes in and they can see that these different topic sections in a page. We can embed images, we can embed video, we can embed text. And then there are also the activities that are listed that they can just click through and work through as needed. On the right-hand side, you can see these little check boxes. This is sort of a to-do list for my learners. So you get to go through and decide, what does a learner have to do? What would you like them to do? But what's really required for completion? And you can say, okay, in this case, this knowledge check is a quiz. You need to get a particular score on the quiz, and then you're complete with this coursework. And so the system will automatically be checking, okay, did you read all the resources? Did you do the things you're supposed to do? Can I release this content to you? If you've passed it, what do we do next? Do we release another course? Do I give you a badge? There's lots of different ways to help the learner progress through their content. Here's an example of a lesson activity. A lesson activity allows you to create a slideshow-like piece of content with branching content. So based on what you need the user to do, they go through the different pages, and you can say, okay, if they complete this page or if they answer a question, what happens next? Where do they go if they miss the question? Where do they go if they get it correct? And all of the information about that is going to be available through reports. What questions people missed, what their scores were, etc. And I'm going to give you a couple of resources at the end where you're able to go through and decide, go through and play. Go play with the lesson module, go play with the wiki, etc., so that you don't necessarily have to do all of that right now. Here's an example of the lesson in use, so we can see that the user is able to work through, they can click on different buttons and be guided through the content in the way that you want them to be guided through it. As you're going through and building various activities, you can also do things like glossaries. There's also a database, so you can go through and have a little bit more custom tool that users can come in and fill in information in. You can use this not only as a training tool, but also as a workspace. So if I am doing some project tracking, maybe I do want to track that right through the Totara Learn system because it's something that's applicable to my learners and the work that they're doing. So you have the ability to take all of these different tools and decide what makes the most sense to get your learners guided through their content, completing their courses, etc. In this screenshot, we're just showing some examples of repositories. So where can stuff come from, essentially? You have that ability to build a lot of content within the site with those different activities. You also can bring things in from external sources. We can upload files, we can bring in Wikimedia, bring in things from like Box and Dropbox and Aquella, Flickr, Google Drive, etc. So you can decide what you need in terms of content coming from various places. Also things like OneDrive, Amazon, etc. So you can see that whole list. So those are the pieces that sort of help us develop our online and e-learning content. We also, though, have a lot of offline and blended learning that we're doing. If I need someone to learn how to drive a forklift, there's really only so much I can do in terms of online learning for them. Sometimes I might need them to come to a classroom, in the case of driving a forklift, hopefully. And it's funny because I use that example a lot, and I noticed across from my grocery store, there actually is a school that does forklift training. So now I'm really curious to actually go and see how they do it. So if we need to, we can use the seminar tool, which is, again, built right into the system as a course activity. And we can set it up so that users can come, they can sign up for events. They can sign up for which class time is going to work the best for them, which location it's going to be in. The learner can come sign themselves up. Their manager can sign them up on their behalf. Even the person running the session, the trainer, is able to come in and establish the dates and times for the event, where it's going to be, how many seats are available, etc. So this whole seminar piece is basically like a mini registration system that lets people sign up for events. And I know this is sort of like a very fast run through of everything, but again, I'm going to give you that demo site link at the end so you can go and actually play with all these tools in sort of a live working system. When it comes to evaluation and measuring engagement. So it's great that the learner came and did all this stuff, but what are they actually getting out of it? How do we show that, yes, they do understand the material? Well, honestly, the biggest way and the most common way is using quizzing. SCORMs have the ability to have built-in simulations and things like that, but sometimes honestly you just need a quiz, you know. And so Totara does have a quiz built into it where you can come in and say, okay, here's when it's available. You can set things like time limits and submission periods. You can decide how the quiz is going to behave. Is it going to shuffle questions and things like that? And there are many different question types. So there's actually a full quiz builder built into the software, where you can come in and say, okay, here's the quiz I want. I want to have multiple choice, a couple of multiple choice questions, maybe a few true and false. And you're going to go through and build out these questions, and then the system, in some cases, will be able to automatically grade them for you. So again, even the quizzing can be a self-paced piece of the learning. So here's an example where a multiple choice question is being built out. Here are the questions that were available, and this is actually a multi-select, so there can potentially be multiple correct answers. Down below, we're deciding what the person is going to get in terms of feedback. Do they get feedback immediately? Do they get to see what the correct answers were, what the incorrect answers were? Down here, we're showing the different responses that are available, the different choices, and how many points the person will get depending on what they select. When the person does complete their work, we can automatically award them badges. So badges are essentially a digital certification that the person receives. Sometimes you'll see them on people's LinkedIn profiles, or occasionally in email signatures or things like that. So when the person does complete some sort of coursework, or a program or a certification or something like that, they can be issued a badge. And so it's a way to reward someone for the things that they've done. If you are on the Totara.community site, you'll notice that when you complete a course, you'll receive a badge for it. And that's a way for us to help you track, what things you've completed, what certifications you've received, what areas you're knowledgeable in. And another piece that doesn't get used quite as often in outside of academic training, but sometimes does, is using a grade book. So there is always a grade book built into the system. So if you are running based on scores, you have to get at least a 90% on the quiz, and you need to get a certain percentage of completion on something else, you have the ability to get into this grade book for a user. You can come through and set it up and decide how it's going to be weighted, what points are available for various things that the person works on, etc. So you have that ability to get into a true gradebook if you need to. So along with all of those tools around teaching and learning, we also allow for customization. Because in corporate training, it's, oftentimes we're using one site to deliver content to a variety of different people. I might be training my internal staff doing their HR and compliance training. I might have customers who need to get some training, on, in my case, they're getting trained on how to use Totara, so they have, those different software training pieces. You may have different training available for consultants that you have coming through, maybe different compliance pieces that they need to complete. And so you're able to use a Totara Learn site to develop and deliver content for many different user groups, or audiences is what we call them. So what you do is come through and define an audience. So who is this group that you want to have something for? In this case, maybe it's everybody who's in the management area and has people who report to them. Maybe they have specific training like sexual harassment and public speaking and things like that that they need to have delivered. So you're able to come in, and rather than enrolling each person individually in the coursework they need, we can come in and say, well, we already know who they are. We know that they have direct reports associated with them. And so let's build an audience based on that rule. And then we can deliver content, and we can decide what they're automatically assigned, what's just visible to them, what goals we want to assign them, that sort of thing. We can also decide what the system is going to look like when they come in. We can set up dashboards, which allow us to say what blocks or pieces of functionality we want someone to see when they first log in. We can also go through and have those more personalized. So we can say, if you're in a particular audience, this is what you see. If you're logged in, here's what you see. If you're not logged in, you might see something else. So for example, with the community site, when you come in, you see something different before you log in and after you come in. And we're able to do that based on those dashboards. We can also control what the main menu looks like. So across the top of the page in the software, there's a series of menu items. And so you can decide, based on a person is, what menu items makes the most sense to be accessible to them. And if you have different organizations, like in this example, I might have different help docs or different portals or something like that that folks need to have access to. So based on If this person is in organization A, then they would see this particular menu item. So those are the choices that you can make for each of those menu items that are shown. We just released Totara Learn version 12, and one of the things we included is a brand new course catalog. So if you have used previous versions of Totara Learn, you'll see a very different look and feel now, which is delightful. I'm really pleased with the way it looks. So you can come through, and this is fully configurable. Each of these tiles represents one course, program, or certification that is available to your learners. We can see their overall completion of that item. So in this case, here's a course they completed. Here's one that they've partially completed. We can mark particular courses or programs or certifications as featured items. We can also tag our content to say, okay, this is something related to compliance, or this is related to healthcare, or something like that. And so you can come through, configure the sort of filters that will be available. So I could come and say, okay, well, I want to see all of the e-learning courses that are just courses, maybe not total certifications, and that are tagged in certain ways. So you can come through and choose those pieces. The images that are displayed are going to be something you can upload. So there can be one default that's uploaded for all course program and certifications. And then for individual courses and programs and certifications, you can come through and upload specific images for each one that's applicable to the content within them. So we've got all of these great delivery options. How do we actually get people into the system, and how do we manage them? So looking at team management, when we are bringing users into the system, what we're often doing is pulling them from an existing like HR system or maybe some other system like Salesforce or something like that. We can automate the ability to bring the users over from those systems. So it can actually just pull in the details that you already know: their email address, their first and last name, what their position is, what the organization they work for is, their department head, etc. All of that can be automatically populated in the system. And based on that, the system can go, oh, you are a manager for these 6 people. Here is the information about these 6 people that you need to see. So it can be things like learning plans. It can be things like their records, so you can go and just see their history in the system. We'll also talk about performance management in a little bit here. Down below, you can see the tasks, the alerts and notifications that are in the system. And so we can go through and say, okay, well, here are the things that the system needs you to do as a manager. Let's go approve these items that this person has requested. Here are the notifications around things like seminars that people may have signed up for, or updates people have that you need to see. We also, and I apologize for the dog barking upstairs, working from home during the polar vortex leads to a little bit of a noisier work environment sometimes. But down here, we can see with these different events, there are individual review items. So if I did get a notification, I can click on it and say, okay, it looks like Victoria signed up for a first aid training at this date and time. And I can choose as her manager whether I want to accept and allow her to go to that. If I want to reject it, maybe I know she has a meeting at that time, and so she's not going to be able to be at that. Or I can dismiss or cancel just the notification. As a manager, I also have the ability to reserve spots. And so if I want to say, keep this number of seats available for me in these various seminars, I can do that. And then I can enroll my folks on their behalf within those sessions. We also have graphical reporting within those dashboards. And so we can come in and say, okay, when a manager first logs in, what does the system even look like? So they can come in, they can see the blocks that we talked about, so pieces of functionality that are important for them. And then there is, in this case, a graphical report in the middle of the page. So we can see course progress for my individual users, the number of courses they've started, the number that are in progress, and the number that are not completed yet, as well as things like the number of competencies they've achieved, coursework they've done, etc. Down below, we have templates for our learning plan. So a learning plan is a little bit more hands-on. Like we have all this automated training that they might automatically receive. A learning plan is about more hands-on training. You have specific skills that you need to have. We need you to go through and, take a course maybe that helps you fulfill this competency. Once it's been fulfilled, I, as your manager, can come in and say, mark you as competent or not competent in that area, or what your level of proficiency might be. Down below, we have our different proficiencies. We can see where the person was. So that's one thing we're tracking, is where the person was when they completed things, where they were, where they are now. So that if, for example, they completed this training, but they're obviously not proficient in an area, we can find out what happened with their training. There's quite a lot of different pieces like that. We can also bring in outside evidence. So if I completed a course outside of the system, I have the ability to say, this person already did a CPR training, maybe it's through the Red Cross, it is appropriate for, it's equivalent, I should say, for the training that we offer through our system, and so let's mark the person complete for that. So a person's manager can come in and actually physically just hit a box basically and mark the person complete for that work and give them an override for it. As part of that personal tracking, we also have performance management. So we have the ability to have user appraisals with different phases where we can come in and say, okay, well, let's review your competencies for the year and set our plans for the year. In the middle of the year, we'll review, we'll see how things are going. And at the end of the year, we'll come through and assess and see if you met your goals or not. And so this is around how our learning is actually going to impact our business skills and our abilities. So just scrolling down through a couple more pieces around this, we can send custom notifications, and there's notifications around a lot of things in the system. In this case, it's specifically around performance management. So the system is sending notifications to say, hey, you've got some training you need to do. In this case, it's, hey, you have an appraisal you need to complete. But the system is able to do notifications both within the system, like we saw before, as well as sending them out via email to the user. Because we don't assume people are going to log in to check to see if they have something to do. We want to push out notifications. Notifications will go when someone is enrolled in a course. It can go when they have a program that they need to work on or a certification that's coming up due. All of those pieces can have those notifications. The same is true for seminars. So if we have a classroom session coming up, we can set up custom notifications that will go out for the user about that. We can also complete 360 feedback forms. So again, this is a configurable form that you get to build on the system, and you can come through and say, here's the survey to complete about this person. Maybe you and I worked together on a project, or maybe this person, provided support to someone outside the company. We can send off a copy of this form via email and say, hey, can you fill this out about this person? We're going to use this as part of our feedback and appraisal process at the end of the year. So we're able to send those off and request feedback. We're also doing goal tracking, so we can track company goals that we may have set up, things that are based on the individual. We may also have ones that are based on the person's position or the organization or department they work in. There's a lot of different training pieces that you can have within the system. So we're coming towards the end, so if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A area. I just have a couple more topics to cover. One piece is hierarchies. So when we're building out a system, doing the implementation, one thing we need to do is say, okay, who do you have and what do they do and where do they do it? Because learning will be attached to those things. If you have a particular position, there might be certain competencies or skills you need to have. There may be certain training you need to have. If there's a particular organization or team you work on, again, there might be specific goals that you have based on that. And so what you're able to do in the system is set up organization and position hierarchies. You're able to then link them to individual users, and that can be part of that HR import process where we say person's name, person's email address, user ID, position, organization, manager. All of that can automatically be brought in. The user account is created, and then there's this cascade effect where the learning that's associated with them, the audience that they're a part of, all of those pieces are automatically linked to that user based on the details we know from their profile. This is just talking through that a little bit more. And then when it comes to compliance, we talked about individual courses. You also have programs and certifications where you can say, go complete these 3 courses or go complete one version of this content. So we can go through and set up learning pathways for these users, as well as certifications where the training expires, you need to come back and redo it or do a refresher course every so often. The system's handling all of those tracking pieces for you automatically. And all of that data is available through reporting. We have a custom report building system where you come in and say, well, I need some information about, let's say, course completion, so it's sort of like a canned report source. And then you come in and say, here are the columns I care about. Here are the things I want to filter by. And then you can build graphs. You can have table-based data. You can export your data into different formats if you need to. Go through and build filters. And one of the biggest pieces about reporting is that you have content controls that allow you to say, this report is going to show this sort of data to this user, so that one person sees, if I'm from marketing, I see marketing data. If I'm from IT, I see IT data, etc. You can schedule reports. You can monitor events in the system. And there's also other versions of reporting as well. The system is currently available in 36 languages, so all of the menus and things like that are automatically translated. You just have to translate your content that you're adding to the system. There's a lot of examples of different companies that are out there using the system. We have over 11 million users at this point, 11 million learners. So here's some examples of various sites. Totara sites can be branded, so the look and feel can change based on your company. So you can see these are all Totara sites, but they all look and feel just a little bit different. And the way that you get Totara is through the Global Totara Partner Network. So we have over 95 partners in 45 countries. They are companies that specialize in implementation, customization, deployment, and support for Totara systems, as well as potentially other systems like Salesforce or other learning management systems. And we can help you connect with Totara partner companies. To get more information, you can come to Totara.community. That's the community that I run, and so you're able to come and ask questions and things like that. Go to Totara.help for the documentation, TotaraLearning.com for our generic website if you want more resources or to see case studies or things like that. And if you want to play with the software, go to demo.totaralearning.com. That's a version 11 system that is populated for reports and with user accounts and things like that. So you can go and play with the system and kind of get a feel for it. And then when you're ready, you can reach out for a demo or reach out with questions. So I know I've run over my time a little bit. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out either via email, reach out to me on Twitter. I'm all over the place. I'm on the community site as well with any questions that you may have, and I'll be happy to help you out. Thank you for your time and attention today, and have a great rest of your week. I'm going to hang out just for a minute or two if I see any questions pop up, but otherwise, please feel free to sign off.